All right, Florida State is doing their absolute best to try and hold on to a five-star offensive tackle, an elite prospect in this 2025 class. Solomon Thomas was on campus this weekend, and though some outlets reported he had shut it down or was completely closed off to recruiting, I don't think we're quite to that point yet, but I think we're really, really close. And Solomon Thomas did say he's pretty locked in with the Seminoles, and he was one of the big-time prospects on campus for Florida State this last weekend. Programs like LSU and UF are doing absolutely everything they can to try and flip the elite offensive lineman, but it does seem like he's pretty locked in with Florida State. In fact, he shared a little bit of that insight as to why he was so locked in with Florida State, and I think some people missed the key part of his answer when he gave it while he was leaving the Moore Center on Sunday. He spoke about that with Noles 247, and I want to show you a video that I got from them now.
It's not a sales pitch at all. Tell them what's real, good and bad. It's Tallahassee, the best of both worlds, work and play. It's a college town. You're gonna get pushed every day. Nothing's easy. Nothing easy is gonna come out of this, but at the end of it, we're gonna come out a lot stronger. But I just told them, my story, and, they asked me questions like, why'd you commit? I'll tell them why I committed in a heartbeat, because, it's 100% real. It's not, I'm getting paid a certain amount of money, or because I can go somewhere else and make way more money than, what they give me, but it's not about that. It's about, the coaching, and it's about the culture it's about the grind that these guys have been through. They went from being nothing to, Coach Atkins being, sought out as being a head coach. I'm gonna tell them everything that's real. It's not a sales pitch.
He talked about it not being a sales pitch. He talked about the fact that it's just so real. He kind of gives the good and the bad. Like, they're going to work, but at the same time, they're going to play. It's Tallahassee. It's a college town. And I know that our brethren down there to the south like to push, like, why wouldn't you want to live in Miami? Well, kids pick to live in places like Tuscaloosa and Athens and Gainesville and Tallahassee and other massive college towns like Norman and other places like that every day. It's not just about, well, I'd like to live in a big city like Miami. Most kids understand that they're going to probably spend a lot of time in a college town and then go off to a pro city in Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami, Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte. We can list them all at some point in their career. He talked about wanting to be pushed every day and talking about nothing is easy, but at the end of it, how you could come out a lot stronger. But then I think what most people missed is what he talked about with money. And we've been massive fans of the battles in here and still are, and still encourage you to go support if you haven't already. But he talked about the money. And he talked about he could go elsewhere. He could go somewhere else right now. There were other programs offering him more money. He didn't call him out by name, but that Florida and LSU were doing everything they possibly can to try and get this flip to happen. And he says to him, it's not about the money. It's about coaching and culture and the grind. If Florida State's paying him, right? Like there's no doubt that is what recruiting is now. You are absolutely, if you're a five-star, you're getting paid to commit and come to a school. Solomon Thomas is not going to any school just because he loves the colors or just because he loves the coaches and turning away money. He even said that. I could be getting more than what they're giving me here. We understand. We can call a spade now. We don't have to, say, oh, well, he just committed because he loves the garnet and gold. No, we get it. But he did say other programs, you can look at who's at the top of his list right now outside of Tallahassee, are offering more. To them, it is about the money. That's the only. Why would you go to a place that Florida State has beaten their brains in both of the last 2 years, in both those SEC programs, and not come to the winners that's in Tallahassee? Well, you've got to make it more lucrative for them. You've got to make it where those kids would want to go there. Why would he go play for a coach that's probably going to get fired this year in Gainesville? Well, money is a pretty strong convincer. LSU does a great job on the offensive line. There's no doubt about that, but it's not all about money to him. And I think that's a good perspective to have, not only for him, but when he's talking to other recruits. I think that's a big deal and something that most 17, 18-year-old kids do not have the kind of mindset about them. He was very upfront. He was very honest. Look, I'm getting money here. But if it was all about the money, I could just go elsewhere and get that there. But it's about the coaching, it's about the culture, and it's about the grind. And looking at where they've been and where they are now, It's something that certainly seems to impress him. Now, going into his visit, there were some concerning comments that he made that were obviously planted by other programs trying to negatively recruit the Seminoles. I want to talk about that in just a moment, but first, I want to give some love to our friends over at the Mango Board. Listen, June is almost over, and we've told you this. June is National Mango Month. And so the next time you're at the store, do me a favor, grab a couple of mangoes, tweet me a picture at TJ_Pittenger, and I'll select a random winner for something that I'm not even going to tell you what it is. It might be some Mango Board swag. It might be a gift card to Garnet and Gold. We don't know yet, but I'm going to pick a winner, snap a picture of a couple of mangoes that you're picking up at your local grocer, and see if you can win something from Double Fries No Slaw. Mangoes are the best fruit out there. My kids go crazy for them. They're actually napping right now while I record this. But when they get up, we've got one that we're ready to slice into and have an afternoon snack. Your kids will go crazy for them. You'll enjoy them. The Mango Board also supports FSU athletics, so make sure that you're supporting them by literally just grabbing a couple of mangoes the next time you're at your local grocer. Appreciate them for their support. All right, some concerning comments that were made by him, by Solomon Thomas, heading into the visit. This was a few weeks ago, but he talked about how Florida State had taken so many transfers at offensive line and how other programs were certainly getting to him about the fact that Florida State, were they developing enough? Would they develop him? Or would they just end up taking more transfers at O-line? And that's concerning to hear from a kid that's currently committed to you, a kid that is on your commit list. However, when asked about it, Thomas gave a pretty good answer on development and on Coach Atkins. Go ahead and do me a favor and listen to that here.
From a development standpoint, do you feel confident that if you were to come here, you're going to get that from Coach Atkins, from Coach Norvell, the staff, 100%. At your position?
100%. Coach Atkins and Coach Norvell at the offensive line position don't have the biggest names that are being drafted. Well, coming out of high school, they weren't the biggest names. But through the development of the Florida State football team, they're given opportunities that they never would have imagined them being able to have. Back when Florida State had the worst offensive line in the country by far, to being a true candidate for the Joe Moore Award. And that happened in 3 years. And I mean, it takes guys like me. It takes guys like what's his name? What's his name?
Ty Haywood.
Tay Haywood, Peyton, Josh Petty. It takes guys like those. If I know what he did with those guys and what their status was outside, coming out of high school, just it's crazy, you know. I can only imagine what he can do with us.
So he mentioned he 100% felt like he could get that development at Florida State. Earlier in the interview, he was asked, did a lot of his questions get answered? Did the things that he wanted to check on here in Tallahassee get answered? And he said yes. He didn't allude to exactly what those were. But if you're going into your visit saying, hey, I'm not so sure about development and how much they use the portal at O-line, and you come out of the official visit saying, yes, I am 100% confident that they can develop me. I think that Coach Atkins and Coach Norvell and this program made a pretty good impression on that. And they answered that, or at least cleared that up for him some. So that negative recruiting that others did, I think they did a good job of trying to combat that and eliminating that. And you want to see that, right? You want to see your coaches have an answer, because no program is perfect. There are issues with every program, and there's no perfect program out there. Even if you're at UF, how do you combat the negative recruiting of your coach is going to get fired? You can't win a game. You're terrible on the road. How do you combat that, right? If you're at Miami, hey, you've got all the talent in the world. You've had a top 10, 12 roster the last couple of years, and your coach continues to give games away. If you're Miami, how do you combat that if you're Miami? I'm not even talking smack about. If you're Florida State, hey, you're in the ACC. You didn't even get in the playoff last year. Hey, you've taken a lot of portal guys. Every program's got those things that others are going to negatively recruit. How do you combat it? How do you shut it down? And Florida State did a really good job with this. And I think Thomas is somewhat repeating what he's heard, and then somewhat probably he realizes it as well. Because when you tell somebody something, they're going to fact check you. They're going to make sure that you're accurate. They're going to make sure that you're not feeding them a load of BS, right? And so what did he say? Hey, look at the names that Florida State has been bringing out of high school the last several years. The guys that are on the offensive line now. And look at where they were ranked. And this is not to disparage them, but Florida State didn't have a lot of former 5-stars sitting there across the offensive line. Former guys that were just absolutely can't miss prospects that you went up against Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama and beat them out for. They just don't have those guys on the offensive line. However, if you look at those guys that they did bring in and where that offensive line is today, what the development path has been for those guys and where the offensive line is today compared to where, like Thomas said, just a few years ago, one of the worst offensive lines in the country, all the way up to Alex Atkins being a candidate for the Joe Moore Award, the #1 offensive line coach award. It's remarkable. And so if Alex is doing that with guys that maybe aren't the most highly sought after, maybe aren't the biggest named recruits, what can he do with guys like Petty and guys like Thomas and guys like Haywood, others, Peyton Joseph and others that are going to be potentially in this class? He said if he can do it with those other guys, he said, I can only imagine what he's going to do with us. And I think that's huge. Florida State absolutely got negative recruited here, and they turned that. They turned it back and kind of told the truth of like, hey, yeah, you're right. We are putting guys into the league at an enormous rate on the offensive line, but we've taken guys that weren't very highly recruited, weren't very highly ranked, and we've turned them into a very good offensive line unit, an above average offensive line unit, so much so that our coach is up for the offensive line coach of the year. What more can we do with you? What more can we do when you get to town? What more can we do when you and some of these other guys are on campus? And if we pull in 3 or 4 blue chip offensive linemen, 2 of them being 5-stars with Thomas and Petty, fingers crossed, hopefully we can pull that one off as well. This offensive line is going to be really, really good for a really, really long time. These are the battles that Florida State has to win. They have to lock Thomas down. I was a little bit worried about even making this video because I don't want to see him reopen things back up in a couple of weeks, but I'm not super worried. Everything he's saying coming out of that visit, everything he's kind of pushing toward and alluding to, and the way that he's talking about getting his questions answered and locking in. And, I'm a Seminole. I feel really good about it. And I know there have been other guys that have done that before in the past and then flipped 3 weeks later. We won't mention names, but here we are. I feel really good about where Thomas is right now. And I think the Noles hold on, and I think they add too. I think Peyton Joseph is going to be a Nole. I think Josh Petty, you have a really good chance there as well. And so we'll see what the next couple of weeks look like. Hey, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys for checking this out. Solomon Thomas is not the only recruit that I think we've got good news coming on the way for. We talked about that in another video. If you missed it, you can click on the screen right now to check it out.